So, you want to be adventure smart.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
But what is being adventure smart?
Being adventure smart is really all about taking responsibility for your own safety and following the 3 T's.
Got it. What are the 3 T's?
What are the 3 T's? The 3 T's are the trifecta of outdoor safety: trip planning, training, and taking the essentials. The 3 T's can vary from person to person, activity to activity, and season to season. But here are some important ways to ensure you are prepared and safe on your next adventure. Trip planning. We could go on forever about this one. Trip planning is an essential step and one of the easiest ways we can stay safe on our adventures. This is something that should be done every time we head into the outdoors, whether for a few hours or multiple days. Trip planning can be broken down into 4 simple steps. Planning your travel route and navigation is about picking a trail or route based on its difficulty that's relative to your experience, ability, and the amount of time you have. Know your limits. Not all trails are created equal, so know the terrain and conditions. A 10-kilometer hike scrambling straight up a steep mountain is a lot different than a 10-kilometer stroll around a lake. Before you go anywhere, check the weather and keep checking it as things can change fast. This includes wind, precipitation, temperature, and sunset times. Finally, make sure you leave a comprehensive trip plan with a trusted contact. Keep in mind, this may not be your mom or dad or best buddy. Choose someone you can count on if you were to get into trouble. A comprehensive trip plan might be as simple as sending your trusted contact a text or email with key information about your activity, or using the AdventureSmart app, which allows you to enter a detailed trip plan. Training doesn't mean being an elite athlete or being queen of the mountain on Strava. Training is a continuous process of outdoor recreation. It's about developing the necessary skills and abilities to be safe. This might include working your way up to that big summit hike, taking a few courses to expand your wilderness and backcountry knowledge, navigation and route finding courses, or even learning more advanced skills like rescue and emergency training. You have planned and trained. Now make sure you take the essentials. Taking the essentials means packing everything you potentially need to stay warm, safe, and dry if an emergency unexpectedly arises. What if you rolled your ankle or got hurt? What if you got lost and had to spend the night outdoors? Take the time and be prepared to look after yourself. So that's it. Those are the 3 T's.
That's it.
But no matter how hard you train, how well you trip plan, and how much essential gear you bring, you may still find yourself in an emergency. And that's okay. The wilderness can be unpredictable. If you find yourself in an emergency, it's important to stop, think, observe, and plan. Use that essential gear you brought to stay warm, dry, and safe, and contact 911 on your emergency communication device. Remember, search and rescue in BC is free for everyone. Remember, safety is an outcome of good trip planning, training, and taking the essentials. It's your responsibility. So let's all do our part and be adventure smart.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. I'm Scott Montague from Coquitlam Search and Rescue, and I'll be keeping a close eye on both Zoom and Facebook Live tonight. Your cameras and mics are off for the session, but we still want to hear from you. If you have a question or you just need to tell us something, throw it in the Q&A box so we can keep track of all of your questions, and then we'll either answer them live or online. If you don't want the audience to see your name, make sure to mark your question as anonymous. I'll also be keeping a chat box open and keeping an eye on what's there and maybe posting a few links in there as we go. I also encourage you to use the reactions buttons throughout the webinar. You can give a thumbs up, hearts, or other reactions. Feel free to give it a try right now. And also, I want to let you know that if you stick around to the end, you'll have a chance to win a giveaway from our sponsor. And everyone will be getting a freebie from our sponsor, FatMap. To introduce our special guest for the evening, I'd like to welcome the person who gets to use the executive parking at the BC SARA offices. None other than the Executive Director of AdventureSmart in BC, Sandra Riches.
Thank you, Scott, and welcome everyone. We're glad to have you this evening. I just wanted to start off with a little bit of information before I introduce our guests. Search and rescue groups in British Columbia now average 40 search and rescues per year involving people living with dementia. And dementia in British Columbia is predicted to increase by more than 200% over the next 30 years. Our guests are here to help you understand a little bit more and learn a little bit more about those family members that we love and have dear to our heart. We've got two guests tonight, which is great to see here. Susan completed her BA in Recreation and Leisure Studies for Special Populations at the University of Alberta. She subsequently worked as a recreational therapist in seniors living and long-term care environments, eventually joining the Alzheimer Society of BC as a support and education coordinator. In 2022, Susan joined the education team at the Society and now focuses on building and presenting educational workshops for professionals with a special focus on healthcare workers. Sana is our second guest here this evening, and she's a change maker and an advocate for older adults to age well with dignity and support in accessible and inclusive communities. In her current position with the Alzheimer Society of BC, she leads the Society's dementia-friendly communities initiatives and works closely with municipalities, community organizations, businesses, and service providers to form strategic partnerships in working towards becoming more inclusive of people living with dementia and care partners. Sana has a master's in arts degree from Simon Fraser University. We're quite pleased to welcome both of them this evening, and we look forward to a very new and exciting relationship with the Alzheimer's Society of BC. Welcome to both of you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Sandra, for that warm introduction, and thanks so much for having us today. I'm going to wait a quick second while Susan, my friend here, is going to share her screen so we can all view the presentation together.
Hi, Sana. Are we all good now?
Susan, I actually see your other screen, not the presentation screen.
Isn't that a shame?
Oh, it's all good. It's the technology world.
That should be better.
And indeed it is. Thanks so much, Susan, for walking us through the presentation, and a very warm hello and welcome to everyone joining us here today. Thank you for joining us to get to know a little bit about dementia and learn how to become a bit more dementia friendly. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge with gratitude and respect that the Alzheimer Society of British Columbia operates on traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of Indigenous peoples around the province. Our provincial office is located on the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, with regional offices located on traditional territories in all regions of British Columbia, and we're very grateful for that. This is a very exciting day for us today. Just in June, the Alzheimer Society of BC and BC Search and Rescue Association inked a new memorandum of understanding with the goal of reducing the risk of people living with dementia becoming lost or disoriented in community through specialized training for our search and rescue officers, and by doing public webinars like the one today to raise awareness, engage community members, and reduce stigma associated with dementia. We thank you for joining us today. A little bit about us. My name is Sana Aziz, and as Sandra did a lovely introduction, I won't repeat myself, but essentially I lead the Dementia Friendly Communities Initiative here at the Society, and in my role, I get to work very closely with community partners and service organizations, municipalities, to form partnerships like the one we've just confirmed with Search and Rescue Association in BC, and support them in working towards becoming more dementia friendly. Susan, my friend and colleague, leads our education at the Society and works with various groups to raise awareness and especially works with healthcare sector to build awareness and skill around supporting people living with dementia. The Alzheimer Society of BC is a nonprofit organization whose vision is a world without Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. This world, we know, begins with a more dementia-friendly society where people affected by dementia are acknowledged, supported, and included. We are the only province-wide nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting people living with dementia and Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia, supporting their families and friends and healthcare providers. I want to put a little disclaimer out here to say that our mandate and our role is considers a non-medical aspect of the disease, and as such, that's the lens we will be using in our discussion today. Today, we are going to do a kind of a general presentation that introduces the importance of dementia-friendly communities. We will learn about dementia, some signs and symptoms, effective communication strategies, the role of the community in supporting people to stay safe. One of today's main objectives is to help you, our audience, our participants, develop the skills or perhaps refresh the skills you already have to best support a person living with dementia who may be confused, disoriented, or in need of additional assistance in your community. We know that you may have questions that require more than what we'll be covering today. And if this is the case for you, I would encourage you to contact our dementia helpline after the presentation today. We will share information at the end of our time. Now let's move over and talk a little bit about what it means when we say what dementia-friendly communities. There are an estimated 85,000 people living with dementia in British Columbia, and approximately more than 60% of those people living with dementia live in their communities. The Society's vision is to create a BC that is supportive of people living with dementia. The dementia-friendly community is supportive, it's inclusive, and accessible for people living with dementia and their caregivers. It mainly focuses on a few things like stigma reduction and the inclusion of people living with dementia who feel supported by individuals, businesses, local governments, and allows these individuals to participate in their communities to the fullest extent possible. Now, dementia-friendly communities are defined both by their social and their physical attributes. When we talk about social attributes, we mean community members are dementia educated, they're able to recognize signs and symptoms effectively. And when we say physical attributes or characteristics, we mean communities that have clear and legible signage that's placed at eye level, for example, well-kept streets, easy to use street furniture, etc. So people can continue mobilizing and moving around in their community safely and with confidence that they are supported and they're safe. Now, by participating in today's session, we see that you are recognizing the need for this conversation and taking a step towards becoming dementia-friendly, and we acknowledge you for that. What I love most when we do these presentations is really to share this clip that we're about to share with you, which gives us a little glimpse of what a dementia-friendly community means to somebody who is living with dementia. So I welcome you to this clip, and we'll wait for Susan to play that for us. Whenever you're ready. You are on mute, Susan, so.
Did you know that more than 500,000 Canadians, like me, live with dementia? Or that 1 in 5 Canadians care for someone who lives with dementia? Like me, many people living with dementia still live in our communities after we are diagnosed. It isn't always easy, though. Often, we feel left out and worried about how we'll be treated by others. Sometimes people just don't understand what dementia is and how it affects the brain, or know what to do if we forget something or get confused. So they seem frustrated or dismissive, and sometimes the places we'd like to go are just more difficult to get around. I once got lost trying to find the washrooms in a restaurant because of the loud music, poor lighting, and confusing signs. But it doesn't have to be like this. Everyone in the community can play a part in helping people living with dementia feel welcome and in creating accessible and inclusive spaces for everybody to enjoy. When our communities are dementia-friendly, people living with dementia feel less worried about how we will be treated and more confident about going out. Have you ever thought about what it would be like to live with dementia in your community or workplace? Is your community supportive, inclusive, and accessible for people living with dementia? Is it dementia-friendly in ways that let people stay engaged in community life? Would you recognize the signs that someone may be living with dementia and be able to offer the right type of support? Would you be comfortable talking to someone if you knew they were living with dementia? Would you know how to respond if someone seemed confused or had trouble expressing themselves? Are the businesses, organizations, and public spaces in your community designed so people can use them independently without getting disoriented, lost, or experiencing stigma because they are living with dementia? People living with dementia shouldn't have to work harder than everyone else to stay a part of the community. Wouldn't it be great if the neighborhoods and communities that we all share were dementia-friendly? Together with the Alzheimer Society and community members like you, let's keep challenging the stereotypes and building a dementia-friendly Canada where everyone feels welcomed and supported. Take the first step and visit alzheimer.ca/dementia-friendly Canada to learn more about Dementia-Friendly Canada. You'll find lots of information, education, and resources to help you and your organization become more dementia-friendly members of your community.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Susan. And that's perfect. Thank you. So let's start by asking us and answering the big question. What is dementia? We'll do a quick introduction of what that is and a little overview of that. But again, I'll remind everybody here, if you're interested to learn more, curious, have questions, either drop it in the chat box or feel free to reach out to us after the session. Alzheimer's disease, or let me start by saying there are different types of dementia. There are many types of dementia. Dementia is really an umbrella term for any disease that causes physical changes in the brain, while Alzheimer's disease is a type of dementia. Dementia is so much like the word cancer. There are many different types of cancer. There's liver cancer, breast, skin cancer. Similarly, you can have many different types of dementias, such as Alzheimer's disease, which is mostly common and the most commonly known, vascular dementia, Lewy bodies dementia, and often what we call mixed dementia. That's when a person has more than one kind of dementia. For instance, Alzheimer's disease and say Lewy bodies. What that really means is that the symptoms of both those types of dementias are together, and the person's experiencing different types of symptoms that are attributed to each of those different types of dementias. Dementia causes physical changes to the brain. This causes changes in behavior, personality, and judgment. Different dementias cause different changes in the brain, and dementia affects each person differently. If you know one person with dementia, you only know one person living with dementia. The experience of dementia is unique to each person. Now, it's a really important point to understand that dementia is not a normal part of aging. Dementia is different than normal age-related memory loss. However, age is the biggest risk factor for developing dementia, meaning if we were all to live to be about 90 years old, approximately half of us would develop some kind of dementia. That being said, many people live to be very old and don't ever develop dementia. Dementia is progressive and it's not reversible, meaning it will get worse over time and it is eventually terminal. There are some medications that can help to manage the symptoms, but they don't work forever and they don't work for everyone. There's currently no cure for dementia. But again, I'd like to remind you that every person's journey and experience of this disease is unique and different. So it's really hard to put a common ground to say how the trajectory will look like for someone who is living with some form of dementia. Let's move on. Now, I want to just go over some signs and symptoms of dementia. Want to really start by saying that, as I said earlier, that these signs and symptoms are really not common in terms of not everybody will experience all of these signs and symptoms. And these signs change as the dementia progresses as well. Memory, language, judgment, and all other signs listed here fluctuate day to day, sometimes hour to hour. Dementia is always changing. And we often hear from people who are living with dementia to say that there are some good days and some not so good days, meaning that on some days their brain is able to function in the most productive way. So they may not experience the symptoms that we talk about today in the same way that they may do on a day when their brain is a bit more foggy and it's what we would call a more hard or a harder day. So what are some signs? The first one, and I believe the most common one that we hear the most, is short-term memory loss. It's normal to occasionally forget appointments, neighbors' names, friends' phone numbers, and remember them later. A person living with dementia may forget things more often and not remember them later, especially things that have happened more recently. So, for example, a person living with dementia may have no recollection of visiting the doctors yesterday. Another symptom or sign is difficulty performing familiar tasks. Busy people can be so distracted from time to time that they may leave, say, the carrots on the stove and only remember to serve them at the end of a meal. A person living with dementia may have trouble with tasks that have been familiar to them, like making food, making coffee, or doing things that they were able to do very easily throughout their lifetime. Problems with language, finding the right words. A person living with dementia may forget simple words or substitute words, making their sentences difficult to understand. They may also speak more slowly and need time to put together a sentence. A person living with dementia may have difficulty with tasks that require abstract thinking, such as making sense of symbols and images. Often we use symbols and images for direction or to mark a space. Because of the challenges in abstract thinking, a person may not be able to distinguish what a sign means if the sign is not clear and is too abstract. So for example, a washroom sign that doesn't really look like a washroom sign or has some really funky features may be misleading and may actually not bring the person to the space that they're looking for. Challenges following conversations. Again, from time to time, people may become distracted and lose their place in a conversation. People living with dementia may be more than a step behind in the conversation. For example, they may misunderstand a conversation or they may reply in a more inappropriate way. Poor or decreased judgment. A person living with dementia may have decreased judgment. For example, they may wear heavy clothing on a hot day or not wear a winter coat when it's snowing outside. This is actually especially relevant in a search and rescue situation where you may not be able to assume that the person has made decisions that are, one would say, logical if they were to get lost. Disorientation of time and place. A person living with dementia can become lost on their own streets, not knowing how they got there or how to get home. They may also confuse dates and times and experience time differently sometimes. Let's move along to the next slide. Now, this session is a collaboration between Search and Rescue and the Alzheimer Society of BC so that we can address a safety concern associated with dementia, disorientation and wayfinding. You may be more familiar with the term wandering. Language is continually evolving, and we are now adapting more accurate person-centered language when we talk about the symptoms and signs a person living with dementia may experience. The words we choose should help us understand what the person needs rather than labeling or misdescribing them, which often leads to the stigma that we talked about earlier. Successful wayfinding is knowing where you are, knowing your destination, and how to get there. Being able to recognize your destination upon arrival and then finding your way back. Wayfinding is an essential skill set. We use it every day, and over time, it becomes progressively more challenging for people living with dementia. When a person living with dementia is disoriented, successful wayfinding is unlikely and the situation is serious. And when a person with dementia is lost, it is an emergency and it's the time to call 911. Now, here are some examples of situations where a person living with dementia might become confused or lost. They're going for a walk, even when taking a familiar route, driving or taking public transit, going on a short errand or becoming disoriented while they're on their way, losing a sense of direction in a crowded place, being in a noisy or overstimulated place like an airport or the mall. Now, how would you know that a person may be disoriented in the community or may be having trouble wayfinding or may have gotten lost? Here are some possible signs of disorientation. But again, I'll remind you that this is not a comprehensive list and every person can experience and express these situations differently. But typically, a person who is disoriented or may have wandered, as they say, may be inappropriately dressed for the weather, may become restless, or may be pacing or making repetitive movements. Having difficulty locating familiar places, such as the bathroom, the entrance or exit to a familiar space, may sit in one place for a long period of time. So, for example, you may find somebody sitting outside a library at odd hours at 5 in the morning or very late at night. Someone who's having difficulty explaining why they are there and what they need. So, remember when we talked about the symptoms in the earlier slide, we talked about how conversations are difficult to understand because people are sometimes not able to use the right words. Because of those physical changes in the brain, and as a result, the changes in communication, somebody may be hard to understand when they're trying to explain what they're feeling or going through. Sometimes a person may want to go home without further detail, and they're not able to articulate what home means. Or somebody who may ask for your help, but perhaps have some difficulty explaining their situation or expressing the kind of help that they really need. Now, it's also important to understand that as adults, we're all accustomed to autonomy and freedom, the ability to make decisions about where and when we want to move. People living with dementia tell us that their independence matters to them and that getting out and about is an important part of maintaining an active lifestyle. Our recommendation in all these situations is to be proactive, to be prepared. If you are a person living with dementia in our audience today, or maybe you're a care partner, a friend, or a family member, have a plan. And I'll pass it over to Susan to walk us through what that could look like.
Thank you so much, Sana. So part of your plan should be establishing community connections. So inform trusted neighbors, ask them to stay alert, give them contact information and permission to contact you or a family member if they observe any unsafe behavior. You're building a network here. Pay attention to clothing. The police and search and rescue teams will need to know what the person is wearing. You might want to keep the same jacket, coat, or sweater right by the door. So if that item of clothing is missing, you know what the person is wearing. Have an identification kit that contains vital information for search and rescue or the police. And have 2 copies of that kit, one to give to the professionals and the other to keep at home. These kits might include personal ID, copies of the ID, important data such as height, weight, and absolutely essential is a good quality recent photo and a list of medications. We have these kits available on our website, and I know Scott will be sharing a link with you in the chat today on where you can find these kits and other handouts that we have ready for you to use. Think about sewing or writing identifying information right into the clothing, or taping identifying information onto a cell phone or inside of a wallet. Consider medical identification jewelry, and you might want to research GPS tracking services or cell phone tracking options. We again have a link on our website to the University of Waterloo, who have provided a comprehensive website about these locating device technologies. So if it's something you're interested in learning about, I would definitely check that out. Now, in spite of best efforts, a person may go missing. So we have a few tips for how to begin the search. Try and get a sense of how long the person has been gone. Look inside and around the house, including the basement. Check outdoor areas, front and backyards, garages and sheds. Look for missing items such as the coat or sweater by the door. Perhaps shopping bags might also be missing. A transit pass may have been left on the counter. Those are all really important clues. It's also helpful to know which door the lost person used to exit, because people with dementia may often walk in a straight line. During the search, ensure someone stays home to alert friends and neighbors. We have some considerations for you as well. While you're looking for a lost person, please remember that a person with dementia may not call for help or respond to their name. They may choose to seek out a quiet and secluded spot. That makes them even tougher to find them. People who go missing are often found by people who are actually not officially involved in the search. So that would be members of the public, people like you. And that's why we're so thankful that you're here today. And people living with dementia may not recognize that they are lost or confused, and that their disappearance has affected others. This is a very important fact to remember, especially when a person is found. People may be very stressed, distressed, very worried about a person who's gone missing, but that distress doesn't necessarily need to be shared with the person living with dementia, who may not understand completely the severity of the situation. We have some tips and strategies here to help you with your communication during these times and any time you're wanting to successfully interact with the person living with dementia. The strategies, again, as Sana said, aren't across the board. They don't work all the time for every single person. Think of this as a toolkit of things you can try and you can practice to get good at building your repertoire of excellent communication. Here's our first one. Set the stage. Can they hear you and can they see you? When trying to get your message across, especially for important conversations, reduce distractions and make sure you are clearly seen. For example, if you're in a loud mall and there's music and the sounds of a food fair, try to get to a quieter place. Reduce distractions. Get the person's attention and position yourself. Try to get on the same level as the person so you can see eye to eye. Keep your body language open and relaxed. Remember to smile. Maintain eye contact if this is culturally appropriate, and that will help the person know who is speaking and where to focus their attention. Dementia affects peripheral vision, the vision on the sides. And so it's very important to try and stay front and center and not sit beside somebody to communicate an important message. And please remember, through all these tips, you are trying to convey a sense of calm. So avoid sudden or quick moves. Take your time and slow down. Speak slowly and clearly. Share one message at a time, breaking down instructions or thoughts into short, single sentences. It's also okay to limit choices. Too many thoughts or ideas at one time can be confusing. So take your time. Dementia affects processing speed. So you may need to pause to wait for comprehension and pause again to wait for the response. Show and talk can also be helpful. For example, if you are talking about a phone call that you want to phone somebody to try and make a connection or provide help, show the phone. Or if you're trying to locate somebody on a map using your phone, show the person the map. Give them the visual cues as well as the verbal conversation. It's okay to repeat important information if you find that you're not sure if the message is getting through. However, if you repeat information and you're seeing that that action creates agitation or frustration, please back off, do something else, change the conversation, perhaps sit down and have a cup of coffee. The last thing you want is to add more stress to the situation. We find that close-ended questions are really helpful. So instead of saying, where do you live? Or do you know where you are, what road you're on? Can you describe your home? It really helps to provide closed-ended questions. So, do you know this street? Are you lost? Can I help you? All really simple questions with a yes or no answer. It's so important that to remember that every person with dementia has a different experience and a different journey. We can help someone in our community when they are lost and disoriented. We can provide reassurance, a sense of safety, and a thoughtful approach using our communication tips and our understanding of dementia. No one thing will prevent a person living with dementia from becoming disoriented. At the Society, we know that we need to work together as a community with an informed public like yourselves and partnerships like the one we've established with the Search and Rescue Association of British Columbia to develop multiple strategies to reduce the risk of going missing and to help support people who are living with dementia and help them continue living well in their communities for as long as possible. The Alzheimer Society is here for anyone who wants to learn more about dementia. Our helpline is available from Monday to Friday from 9 in the morning until 8 p.m. We also have support in Chinese and Punjabi language. We welcome your phone calls and encourage you to stay in touch with us. That's why we're here. So there's some information where you can be proactive and supportive in this endeavor. So disorientation and getting lost resources are all available on our website. And when you call our helpline, the phone number is right here. There'll be someone to take your call and email you the information if you prefer to access it that way. We are here to help anyone affected by dementia. So please note down our contact information and please contact us whenever you need a hand.
Thank you very much, Susan. Thank you very much, Sana. And it's marvelous to hear about the relationship that we've started building with this. And there's been a number of questions that have popped up as they've come in. There's one person who was asking about Silver Alert. I'm not sure what Silver Alert is, so I'm hoping you can tell me. Apparently, Alberta's Alzheimer Society uses Silver Alert for dementia people who are lost. And they're asking, can you tell us about Silver Alert in BC? Considering I don't even know what it is, can you start off with what Silver Alert is and then tell me what it is, what BC Silver Alert is?
Sure, I can make an attempt to answer that question, and Susan, you're welcome to jump along. So the BC Silver Alert is a way to alert the public when a vulnerable person needs help or is missing. Every year we know that a lot of people in British Columbia go missing, and so the BC Silver Alert is a citizen-led program. the service is, I don't at this moment. I know that there are a lot of conversations happening at multiple tiers and at multiple municipal levels to bring it into fruition. And there is a group that is dedicated to bring this forward to BC, as mentioned, that there is already a program running in other parts of the country. So we're hopeful that we will hear something more about that, and we're hoping that this can be another way or another strategy in the community that can support people who are prone to go missing.
So is this sort of like an Amber Alert? So in the event someone goes missing, we're trying to get
You
the
nailed it.
information
Yep.
out as far as we can? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. With the difference being that this would be designed for somebody who may be living with dementia or other
Right.
forms or other abilities.
Gotcha. Marvelous. So that's good to know. And it's good to know we're heading towards that direction. If we've got it in another part of the country, obviously it can be done here. So there was another person who was talking specifically about technical solutions. So there was a brief mention, Susan, you mentioned briefly about GPS. Now, in the SAR community, we're very familiar with GPS, but it's always one of these things where we need the subject to tell us where they are. So if you're going around with a personal locator beacon, you flip up the personal locator beacon, you push the button on the side, you press the SOS on your device, or you do whatever you can to get those coordinates to people. But it's different in the case of a dementia patient, because what I think I've understood from you is they aren't necessarily going to know they're lost. So how do these devices, these tracking devices, work?
That's a huge question, Scott, because they all work in a very unique way, and they all have different abilities, but also, what's the word I'm looking for? They don't all work out in the wilderness. Some will work in urban areas, some won't. Some will just show you where a person is, and some will give you more information, like a fall. So it's extensive and it's complicated. And that's why I really want to endorse the University of Waterloo resource, because they actually researched all the different capabilities of several different systems. They broke it down into a table. So that's a good way to start your shopping.
Okay, yeah, it's good, because I know, like, technically, obviously there's something that can tell you if you're in the house or you're not in the house, and it might connect to a base unit in your house, right? And then of course there's something that might connect to a cellular phone network, and the cellular phone network works great if you're in cellular phone service. But of course, if you've been in BC, there's a lot of places that don't have cellular phone service. I don't even have to walk like 20 minutes from my normal home in order to find a place that doesn't have great cell service. So
it's so true,
yeah.
Scott. And that's why this has to be a multi-pronged approach. We can't just say, oh my goodness, I've got a tracker, I'm safe. No, that's not true, actually. It's just like your video said at the beginning, and I wrote it down because I loved it so much. Stop, think, observe, and plan. Well, you do that before an emergency happens. And that it's the same with our system as well. For a person or family affected by dementia, you stop and you think before you get into trouble. You observe all the things that might happen, and then you come up with a plan before it does.
Yeah, trip planning is part of our big 3 T's. And part of that trip planning is, before you go, here's what you do. And in this case, because you're talking about a potential of a person who might leave of their own volition and not necessarily know where they're going, having that plan of, okay, what happens when they do that? Like, do they always go towards the Walmart? Because if they always get out the door and they turn right, and it's always where they go, then that's the way to start, right? If you're going to go and look for them, you're going to turn right because that's the way they always go, and they don't turn left because there's nothing down there or whatever, right? And one of the other things I wanted to ask you guys and mention, on our side, search managers are always looking for clues and habits of people to try and understand what may have happened. Now, obviously, it's great if we have video surveillance and stuff like that. We can see what direction they turned as they came out the door. If you happen to have a camera up, that's great. But it only shows you as far as that camera can look, right? What what do you advise by way of like learning habits and stuff like that, so that you can provide that information to the SAR managers?
Scott,
Are
I
there
may
habits?
ask
I
you
mean,
to.
maybe it's a bad question. Like maybe they don't follow things habitually, and we should expect random.
It's a little bit of both, right?
Okay.
And I think when we talk about creating environments that are dementia friendly, we could even start by looking at our home environment, keeping the home environment more inclusive, more comfortable. So the person is not seeking exit is one
Yeah.
way to prevent, quote unquote, of somebody wandering off. Often, having if somebody is at risk of wandering or going away, then maybe removing visual signs for the person to seek exit. So, removing the keys away from visual, from their visual vision, or maybe changing the way the door looks, adding something on top of it, covering it up so it doesn't trigger exit in a way. Could be some ways that, if
Like
there
putting a
are
curtain in front of it, kind of thing.
putting a curtain, for example, in some, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also really important. It kind of goes back to the ideas and ethos around person-centered care, right? Knowing the person. So often when we talk to family members and when we talk about, supporting a loved one or family member living with dementia, it's important, as we tell healthcare providers, for example, to really get to know the person. And often when you start this search, a good first step would be to ask questions to the family members about habits, about routines. People living with dementia thrive on routines. And that's one of the things we always put out as a suggestion when people are experiencing changes in behavior, to stick to a routine. And often there may be answers that or clues that may come out just when you spend some time getting to know about the person and their habits. And maybe that might lead to a way, for example, to know that a person likes to have their McDonald's coffee at Walmart every morning. So then that could be a clue to know, okay, that's probably the direction that they've gone.
Is there like I'm and forgive me, this may sound
They're no bad questions.
unreasonable, but if a person has hypothermia, I'm much more familiar with a person who has hypothermia than a person who has dementia. Person has hypothermia, they have difficulty in judgment. One of the things they might do is they might take off a piece of clothing, right? They might walk around with their shirt off. Is there a chance that a dementia patient maybe take off their shoes and walk around in their socked feet? Like, are there any visual cues that you could have that, hey, this doesn't quite match what I would expect? Or would you expect the dementia patient to generally sort of just from at a quick view to be like look normal? If you aren't actually observing their activity and you're just looking at them for a brief second, would they look normal, or might they have, I don't know, their arm out of their sleeve or something? See, I told you there was such a thing as silly questions.
Susan, I feel like you want to.
It's not silly, not at all.
Why don't you
I think
take a stab
Scott has
at it,
his
Susan?
Scott has his search and rescue helmet on there and glasses and lens because he's looking for clues, right? I always, when we deliver our presentations for outdoor safety and how do we help a search and rescue member or volunteer like Scott, and there's 3,400 of them in BC, what are the clues that they can look for? And so I was thinking of the same thing, Scott. Are they leaving any clues without knowing they are leaving any clues based on habits, really, maybe, and
putting down their purse and they walk away?
Yeah, characteristics of these people. Are there any things for the community to look for? There's something that might look different, maybe. Yeah, I think that's a good question, Scott.
And Scott, is your question when you come across somebody that you're wanting to assess that situation?
If I am quickly looking at a group of people and one person is standing out, like I said, maybe they have one shoe on and one shoe off. I don't know if that's something that would ever happen with a dementia patient, but I'm just making that up, right? Is that a sign to make me go, oh, hold on, let me pay attention to this person a bit more?
No.
Okay.
No.
Fair enough.
It's not going to be that neat and tidy.
Well, it's like I said, I told you there'd be silly questions. I'm good with
Yes.
that myself.
No,
Scott, honestly, I could
Mhm.
be a person living with dementia right now. Would you
Mhm.
know it?
I don't not based on your behavior at this moment.
No, but trust me, I could be a person living with dementia.
Sure.
So it's that variable, that unique, that different. It really is not predictable or neat and tidy.
It goes to another question someone asked, which was,
I'm actually
oh,
gonna.
sorry, go ahead, please.
Sorry, I'm gonna add one more thing to what
Yeah.
Susan said. To your point, and this is a topic. What you're bringing up, Scott, today is really relevant because what does a person living with dementia look like, right? Is there a look to it? And the answer is no, because uh, as we very briefly touched on that, every person's journey is different. So I would almost say that one of the challenges for somebody living with dementia is really that they may look physically very healthy and well,
Mhm.
because it's the brain that's deteriorating, right? And we can't go inside and look at the brain. So often when we talk about that stigma or that barrier that people living with dementia face in the community, is really such that, because they don't fit in that look of something physically wrong or
Right.
not
There's not something
accurate.
off.
Yeah, people just assume that, that person is full of abilities. And when that person is not functioning in the best way possible in any given day, as a community, we're not equipped to understand that this person may be experiencing something that is more than normal age-related memory loss, or just normal or behavior. So I guess when we're having these conversations like we're having today, we're really trying to do exactly that, right? Raise the awareness, bust myths, and encourage people to really go ahead and learn about what dementia is and what a person living with dementia could or could not look like, or may not experience. So I'm grateful that you brought this question up. And if anybody is curious, call our dementia helpline and talk to us, and we'll walk you through what it really means.
I really appreciate that. There's one more question, and this last question for the night, and then we'll get to our end stuff with Susan there, where she or Sandra, where she will thank us. But the last question is pretty much going on the same line. Is there an age? Again, I think people are talking from the search and rescue side. Is there an age after at which we should sort of assume if a person is lost that they might have dementia? So in other words, is it like if you look statistically on a chart somewhere, is they're going to say, you know what, if the person's older than 70 and we don't know a lot about that subject other than they're lost, we should treat them like a dementia patient? What's that age? And who's going to answer?
I think we both will have an answer, but I'll let Susan go first.
I will lead. So people can have dementia at different ages, Scott. So somebody in their 30s and 40s can have dementia. It's rare, but it's possible.
Mhm.
Most dementias, the dementias we think about, are called sporadic dementia, which means they occur after the age of 65.
Yeah.
Okay. However, and Santa's going to jump in here, it is never safe to assume that age means someone has dementia, because there's hundreds of thousands of people who are 80 and 90 years old who don't have dementia. So
But
Santa,
see,
you want to take
the
it from
interesting thing
there?
is that we're trying to play statistics here, right? Once you get over that 50% range, then, and I don't know enough about the subject. That's the key, right? Once I get over that 50% range, then I have to sort of work on the assumption, the best assumptions I can. And if the best assumption is a person over the age of 70 likely has dementia, then, or 75 likely has dementia, then that's a useful piece of information as a SAR manager.
So to answer to your question, and maybe add to what Susan said, that we know that age is the number one risk factor for dementia. So as we get older, the chances of that person who is lost, chances of them having dementia is greater. So for example, it's fair to say that maybe 1 out of 4 people who are at the age of over 85 will be living with some form of dementia. So I think there are some reasonable estimates that you can make as a manager. And, we have actually like accurate statistics on this that I will be sure to share with you after. I don't have it handy right now, Scott. But
Perfect.
yes, about 5 to 8% of people over the age of 65 have some form of dementia. So if you think about it, it's not that big a number, but that percentage rises as they get older.
With
So
every year.
again, yeah, with every year. So when a person is 90 years old, there's a fair chance that half of those people is a 50% chance of that person having some form of dementia. And it
Right.
could look like short-term memory loss, or it could look in terms of changes in communication or speech. But most often than not, it is Alzheimer's disease, which has and short-term memory loss is one of the biggest changes for somebody living with Alzheimer's. So yeah. Does that
Okay.
answer your question? I see where you're
No, it
coming
does.
from, and I think you need more stats to kind of back that up, and we have those, so we'll be sure to share that with you.
Sandra will love the fact that she bites into stats like it's her main meal. She loves data-driven insights, as she likes to call them. One thing to note, just a note from Kelvin, we don't have to talk about it right now, but Kelvin wants to remind you that we actually have a lost person behavior app that we use for search and rescue. And it has a section on dementia. And we were just going to mention that if you guys haven't reviewed it, Kelvin says you guys should probably review it to make sure that we're making the right assumptions in our searches.
Okay, thank you, Kelvin, for bringing this up. We did not know of this, so maybe I will look to Sandra and Scott yourselves to direct us to how we can get access to this information, and would love to check it out. And I really appreciate that, so thank you.
And with
Thanks for bringing that up, Kelvin. That was great, because that's Sana and Susan. We've had Dr. Robert Kester on. He's the author of and the subject matter expert on lost person behavior. So happy to connect you and send you 2 of our webinars that we've done with him, both bringing in large viewership. So we can share that definitely. Wonderful. Well, I think this evening's coming to a close. Thank you very much, Susan. We appreciate your time this evening. And Sana, it's been wonderful to have you both on board and join us. And everyone that joined us tonight, we appreciate your time, because you've taken some time to learn more about this for maybe a family member or yourself, your community, and knowing now which I feel what we do with our work is offering reliable resources. And that's what we can now do specifically with Susan and Sana and the rest of their team there at Alzheimer Society of BC. And this newly formed relationship between the BC Search and Rescue Association and the Society is a really special one, and one that we're quite proud of and are grateful for and look forward to what's ahead in the future. And I think there's a lot there to look forward to. And this is just the very beginning. We've just cracked the surface, haven't we? And we're quite appreciating your time here tonight. Now, we only have a couple minutes, but we do have a few things. We have one thing to give away. So everyone who joined us this evening will receive a free few months of FatMap, which is a navigation service. So thanks to FatMap for offering that to all of the participants this evening. And one lucky winner, whoever's the quickest to type in the answer to my skill testing question, and it has to do with the presentation from this evening. So hopefully you listen closely to Susan and Sana. Here you go, and Scott will watch closely as you type in your answer. It was all about something that is dear to our heart with what we do at BC AdventureSmart, and it's about identifying yourself and leaving some form of communication and or identification. The whole focus around is communicating with emergency services, family, et cetera, et cetera. We talk a lot about that in our work. It's what we call trip planning. And how do we do that? How do we communicate? But I think it was Susan that spoke about ID and identification. So the question to the public is, to our viewers tonight, and the first one to answer wins a great headlamp offered to our sponsor from this evening, which is Bright Source. So it's hands-free at the campsite and hiking. You've got a great headlamp on. If you could identify 2 of the at least 3 or 4 or 5 ID suggestions that were given tonight of what we as family could provide or attach is a keyword to our family members that might lose their way. I had picked out a few in the presentation, and I found them really helpful pieces. So if you could list at least 2 things that you could, yeah, I think I'm giving it away when I say attached
there's a number of things, and Garth actually had his answer in before you even gave your clue. So Garth
Very
mentioned
good.
that he had put a clothing sticker or put it in your wallet or even in the phone. So make sure you have different places. Bradley mentioned came in second with a driver's license and family pictures. Zoe mentioned having up-to-date photos and meds. And Jonathan again mentioned taping it to your cell phone. So these are all great options, but Garth is our winner for tonight.
Congratulations, Garth. Appreciate it. Wonderful. Well, I believe we're in closing here, and just to invite everyone who's joined us this evening. I know some of you are search and rescue. Thanks for all that you do. For every member of the public that joined us this evening, thank you for getting informed before you go outdoors. And tonight's session, which was a unique one, a little bit outside of our usual themes. So it was really nice to have Susan and Sana here tonight to help us learn a little bit more. I know I did myself. And we look forward to our last 2 summer series webinars coming up July 18th. We have 2 special guests joining us for I'll talk about essentials that you would pack in your pack. It's titled Are Essentials Essential? And the very last one this summer is August 3rd. We're going to be delivering our Survive Outside program. So you've got 2 more to join us, some more prizes to win, some more time with Scott and I. And then again, everything that we have here on our series, we record them and put them up on the BC Search and Rescue Association's and AdventureSmart's YouTube, so you can check it out and share it. And I wish you all a great summer ahead, what's left of it. There's still many weeks and many adventures to explore out there. And thanks for everyone's time and support with what we do. I know all the 3,400 search and rescue volunteers appreciate the effort you take to get informed before you go outdoors. Take care, everyone. Good night.
Good night. Thanks, Anna. Thanks, Susan.